Cern Basher and I were just discussing the fact that on my channel and in this world, it seems that if you really want to be important and successful, that you should be born in a British colony, or what was originally some kind of British colony, move from there to Canada, and from there to the United States. That seems to be, you know, what makes for success.
Based on a sample size of one, Elon Musk, yes.
Well, there's Larry Goldberg.
Oh, yes. Let's not forget him. All
There's
right,
you.
so the sample size has just doubled.
There's you. That's triple.
Well, that's still up for debate.
For somebody else, I don't think. I don't think. Yeah. What do you call it? Nick is not. He didn't start in a British colony. His parents are like from Panama, or his dad is, or something, and Spain maybe.
Hmm.
Maybe they went to Canada from there. I can't remember now. But you go down the list, there seems like an awful lot of people that are. I know there's at least one more. I can't remember who right now.
Well, I think the key thing is not to be born in a British colony, former British colony, but to escape from one.
There you go.
I think is the key factor there.
Has the president suggested recently any ideas of possibly trying to buy New Zealand?
I don't think he knows where it is.
Okay, I'm always surprised when I look at the map
At
because
where it is?
yeah, because it's not like due west of Australia.
Well, it's east.
East, I mean due east.
Yeah,
It's kind of east, kind of southeast, right?
a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you put the two together, you could clearly see that New Zealand was once a part of the Australian continent.
yeah, yeah. It broke off too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
All
Yeah,
right.
very wisely so.
Okay, well, with that opening, that was our brilliant opening that we conceived of.
Well, and actually that was brilliant because that does dovetail nicely into a part of the presentation today.
Wow,
But
cool.
that'll come later. So hold that thought. But one other thing, Randy, I wanted to ask you, are you safe from the fires that are happening in your area?
So far, I'm safe. We have had my son who lives in Culver City, or near Culver City, actually in Inglewood. They have a newborn, so they've just evacuated because of the smoke. Because the baby's, I think, only like 3 weeks old or whatever. So they decided it would be smarter to get out of the smoke. But I don't think they're in any real danger in Inglewood yet, but it's not that far away. It's
Yeah.
Northern Santa Monica is now, being evacuated. I lived in north of Wilshire for the first 6 years of my adult life. And so my neighborhood right now, where I did used to live, is under evacuation. So
Hmm.
yeah, crazy stuff.
Well, I thought you had a brilliant suggestion yesterday on X to fight the fire with tens of thousands of drones.
Yeah, I mean, if you can use 10 or 20 or 30 and do an okay job of trying to get ahead of the fire or trying to douse it,
Yeah.
then why would we stop with 10 or 20? Why couldn't we douse it? I mean, really come in and hit it with maximum power. And whether that's 10,000 or 1,000 or 500 or even 200, I don't know what the right number is, but that shouldn't be a matter of expense. This fire right now, they're estimating at $60 billion.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to take $60 billion worth of aircraft to solve the problem.
I don't think 10,000 water carrying drones. Of course, these would be larger drones, not the
Large
kind
scale.
that we think of when we have cameras on them.
No, no,
Yeah. Yeah. Little bags of water with a goldfish inside.
no,
Um,
they might carry 500 pounds of water, 1,000 pounds
yeah.
of water. These would be large drones. They might even be, they wouldn't necessarily be the helicopter type. They could be,
Right.
regular fixed wing or whatever is the smartest in terms of dealing with the winds that are associated with these fires.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was a brilliant idea. Um,
Thank you. Thank you. This one.
um, yes, one this year. That's good. You're starting off the year well. My wife did take me to task though when I did reach out to you yesterday to see if you were okay. My message to you was, "Are you feeling the heat?" And my wife felt that I wasn't being particularly, understanding if
Oh
you
my
were
goodness.
feeling the heat.
Yes, well, us men, what do we know about feelings?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, with that, let's dive right into some interesting things. We've got a bit of a hodgepodge of things to talk about today.
Okay.
There's this guy at Nvidia. Have you heard of Nvidia, Randy?
Yes, I did. Yeah, Nvidia. Yeah,
Yeah, apparently they make AI chips.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I don't know what they're used for, but no. Anyway, he gave a presentation at CES. Jensen did, and this was kind of an interesting chart that many have highlighted. Kind of the evolution of AI. You go from AI that's perception AI, that's speech recognition, and so on, looking at medical images, to perceive what it's looking at, to generative AI, which has been sort of all the rage since ChatGPT came out. And now we're moving into two other phases that are much bigger and really are happening at the same time. This chart's sort of showing a time series here, but in my opinion, agentic AI and physical AI are happening at the same time.
Hmm. Yes.
Agentic AI is where the AI is acting as your agent, doing things for you, whether it's computer coding, whether it's customer service, whether it's patient care, whether it's buying things for you, whether it's whatever you can think of, planning a trip, and anything like that.
Yes.
And that's going to be very powerful. It's going to be on every device.
And so
And
Jensen and others are suggesting we'll begin to see that in significant amounts by second half of this year.
yeah, yeah, and certainly, on our smartphones, we'll start seeing it more and more. It'll just become a part of the software.
Right.
And then, of course, physical AI, and we know quite a bit about that from following Tesla, whether it be FSD or the humanoid robots. And so, this Jensen's presentation here gave, I think, pretty good credence to what Tesla's doing and where they are. Jensen also stood on the stage here with images of a number of other humanoid robots besides Optimus. And Jensen, if he stood next to these, he'd be about the same size, which he's done in a previous presentation, which was quite funny. But NVIDIA is certainly working with a lot of the different robot makers, which I think is great. And here's the list that I maintain of that.
Ah,
And I keep adding to this list, and I've got a few more companies to look at and potentially add. About half of them are in China. That's marked in red. It seems like a good color to use for Chinese companies, with the Chinese flag being red.
right.
The light blue is US based. The darker blue is European based companies. And then you've got a few other companies that are sort of mixed. Minty Robotics is out of Israel. Boston Dynamics is US based, but it's owned by Hyundai, a South Korean company.
Right.
And of course, Toyota research at the bottom there in Japan. So, this market is heating up. It kind of reminds me of the early days of the EV development. You have a lot of startups.
Right.
And at some point, no doubt, there'll be a shakeout here.
And
But we're still,
you still have Tesla in second place, but Elon said this morning or yesterday that clearly the Optimus is in first place, unless
yeah,
somebody has secrets that they haven't revealed.
well, that's right. And this list, by the way, is not ranked.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It just so happens to put Tesla in second place, which does
Okay.
seem to bother some people that I didn't list Tesla first on this list. And so I'm leaving it there just to bother them, just to continue to bother them. I think it remains to be seen where the companies are and where they rank. I think it's too early really to rank companies. Tesla certainly has a lot of strengths that many of these other companies do not have. But that said, we're still in the early days here.
Right.
Now, last night, Elon was interviewed, and he did mention a few things about Optimus.
There I am. I got ahead of you again. I'm so
You
sorry.
did, as you always do. I think you just know what the next slide is going to be. You've proven that many times, Randy. It's very impressive. So, Elon did mention last night that they'll build several thousand this year. And if all goes well, we'll 10x that the following year. That's 2026. And maybe 50 to 100K. That's next year. And then 10x it again in 2027. Which is interesting because this was actually in line with some of the projections that I put out about 6 months ago.
As did I, as did Scott, and I mentioned you this morning in a video as having been in that group. Yeah, I mean, people somehow are figuring that this is a lot harder to build than it is. It's just
Yeah,
not that hard to build.
that's right. And then he also mentioned, I added to Jeff's post and I said, well, Elon said that most people would like to have their own personal C-3PO or R2-D2. And I actually think that humanoid robots will be the biggest product ever in history by far. What will be the ratio of humanoid bots to humans? My guess is at least 3 to 1, 4 to 1, or maybe 5 to 1. So we're talking about 20 to 30 billion humanoid robots. So get excited if you want about 50,000, next year.
Right.
I'm a little bit more excited about the longer term picture.
Right.
But both are great. Both are very exciting.
Yes.
And just going back to an earlier post I did on this back in May, Elon said something similar. You'll see his quote there at the bottom, or his post at the bottom, where he said the ratio will be at least 2 for every human, maybe 3 or 4.
Hmm.
And as I'm wont to do, I ran some numbers on that, and I said, well, 2 bots per human would be 16.2 billion bots.
Right.
3 is 24 billion. 4 is 32 billion. And that doesn't include any off-planet uses of robots,
There you go.
right? And we haven't really started talking about that yet, but that is coming as well,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. So when I run some of these longer term numbers, and again, this is an old chart that I put together a few months ago. The 1, 2, 3, and 4x represents the number of bots relative to human population.
Hmm.
And, let's just look at the 3x column just to pick one. At 3x, if the bot is working 20 hours a day, working 350 days a year, that's 7,000 hours of work. And let's say it cost you $250 an hour to run that bot. That's what Tesla's revenue would be
Hmm.
if you were using robots as a service. So that's $17,500 a year for Tesla for the bot.
Right.
Let's say by then it cost them $6,000 to make it. The maintenance costs are $3,000 a year. You've got to change the actuators and other parts on the bot pretty frequently. So every year you're spending sort of half of what it originally cost to make the bot just to keep it up.
Hmm.
So that's gross profit of about $13,000 a bot. At 24.3 billion bots in the world, and this isn't necessarily for Tesla, but for the industry, that's $425 trillion of revenue, right? And if these cost numbers are anywhere in the ballpark, we're looking at over 200 trillion of profit, and multiply that by a 30 PE, you're at 10 quadrillion
A
dollars of
brilliant
market
dollars.
cap. Quadrillion, right? Now, this is just napkin math. This is, for
Yeah.
the whole industry. I'm not suggesting Tesla's a 10 quadrillion dollar
Right.
company.
Right.
And as Elon mentioned last night, and he's mentioned several times before, you get to these kinds of numbers and you kind of break the economy.
Right. I think you broke the economy a long before you got to these numbers.
Yes. So the message here, I think, is that massive change is coming. We're probably ill prepared for it. But the more we start to think about this and understand it and plan for it, the better off we'll all be.
Hmm.
Because this technology is coming, it's coming fast.
Yes.
It has the potential to do a lot of very, very positive things. If it's not structured or handled properly, it could be very disruptive, and it will be anyway.
It'll be disruptive, but I think the best analogy is the farm analogy where I forget 1880, 90% of labor was farm labor, and by 1910, it was 90%, 10% farm labor or something. I mean, that is probably completely wrong, but it's on that order.
Yeah. And here you go again with getting ahead of the slides
Oh,
today. So
see? Oh my
example number 2, Randy. Let's see if you can get 3, because that would be truly impressive. All right, but back to the firefighting discussion. A force of firefighting bots would also be pretty powerful, pretty
Yes.
useful,
Yes.
right? They could go to places where humans it wouldn't be safe for humans to go. They're not going to suffer from smoke inhalation problems,
Right.
right? And if you lose a few to the flames, then so be it.
Yep.
Um,
100% agree.
okay. All right, shifting gears back to another exciting development for Tesla, the Tesla Model Y Juniper.
Uh-huh.
This is a post from January 1 with some images of what it might look like. And according to this person, who I believe is based in China, said multiple sources say it'll be released between January 17th and 25th,
Right,
on or before Chinese Lunar New Year.
right.
Full-speed production will begin after Chinese legal New Year holidays. So this drawing or this image of the car, you know, it looks a little bit different than the current Model Y. The front end's very different. It's got the light bar in the front. And as you probably saw this morning, we now have these images.
Right.
So that looks very similar to the previous
It looks
slide.
similar, but if I'm honest, it doesn't look as good.
Well, I think there's some weird things going on here
Angles,
with
the
this
lighting.
license plate holder or whatever this is.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and also this image is covered in snow. It's not, you know,
Right. Yeah.
usually when you show cars off, you clean them up a little bit.
Yeah, right.
So you know, I'm not passing judgment on this yet, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it certainly does look very similar to that original January 1st post.
Absolutely.
So something to be excited about.
Yep. Yep.
Now, as somebody that owns a Cybertruck and a Model Y, I thought that this post was interesting from Cybercraft.
Hmm.
He said the Swiss Cybertruck's size can now be compared to any other car in the database on carsize.com.
Hmm.
So I did that. I compared the Model Y to a Cybertruck, and you can see the length difference.
Huh.
I don't know what he means by the Swiss Cybertruck, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's okay. Well, you know, perhaps he thinks that it was, you know, created in Switzerland. I think he's referring to his vehicle, which I believe is
Maybe.
the only Cybertruck in Switzerland.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, you can see that the Cybertruck is a good front wheel longer than the
Yeah.
Model Y. But I can tell you from experience, from a turning radius standpoint, the Cybertruck, because the rear wheels turn a little bit, it has a tighter turning radius than the Model Y does.
Yep.
So as long as it can fit in your garage, don't be scared about the length of the truck.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Changing gears. The Batman stocks drove the market last year. And I thought this stat was kind of amazing that collectively, the Batman stocks gained 6.2 trillion in market value, while the rest of the S&P was up 3.6 trillion.
So these are the Batman stocks because
They're the Batman stocks because of the initials.
you can spell it out, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Got it. Got it. Okay.
So we're adding Broadcom now to this list. That's the B.
Okay.
And then all the other usual suspects, including Tesla. Nvidia was the largest gainer in terms of market cap change. It looks like about 2 trillion, almost 2 trillion in gain just from Nvidia. And then almost 1 trillion from Apple and Amazon. Tesla had a pretty big jump, and so on.
Yes.
So if you are a stock picker and you didn't own these stocks in your portfolio, you would have massively underperformed the S&P.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you bought like non-S&P stocks that did really well, but there's probably
Right.
few of those. So anyway, that's interesting. It's just showing how, you know, how concentrated the wealth is in the U.S. stock market right now, and where all the gains are coming from. And basically, these are all AI-driven stocks here,
Right. Right.
right? So, and when it's kind of crazy when you think about, we may still be in the early days of AI.
The very early days of AI.
Yeah. So these Batman stocks now, they represent 12% of the S&P 500 revenue, a quarter of the profit, and 34% of the market cap. Right. So some people look at this and say, well, the market cap has gotten ahead of profit. Well, it just may be the market projecting stronger growth ahead for those companies.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah, you'd have a higher PE.
Yeah, a higher PE for the faster growth.
Right.
And then the other thing that's interesting that's going on, I think you and I have talked about this before, but these big tech companies, and this is just showing a few of them here, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Amazon, and Nvidia have collectively acquired 870 companies.
Wow.
or more. I guess 870 plus companies.
Right,
I don't
right.
know from when this started. Maybe it was their IPO date or something, but they have been acquiring a lot of the, what could be small cap tech names,
Yeah.
a lot of startups as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Shifting gears again,
So to speak.
so to
No
speak.
gears, but there's no gears on it, Tesla.
No,
No.
no, we're not. Yeah.
We're going to
I need to
change.
come up with some other
Yeah,
phrase.
we are.
Usually I put in a cartoon. I didn't have a chance to do that today. All right. Which is the worst city in the world for the highest traffic delay time? Well, Istanbul takes that crown.
Huh.
If you live in Istanbul, you spend up to 105 hours a year stuck in traffic.
Wow.
Now, New York and Chicago are tied for second,
Wow.
followed by London, Mexico City, Paris, Cape Town, Jakarta, LA, and Brisbane, Australia.
Huh. So
Okay.
I read yesterday where the time the, the charge for getting into New York now.
How about this slide? The very next one, Randy. That's three.
That's three.
Well done.
Go ahead.
Yep.
I'll shut
Yep.
up.
No, I think you can go ahead. I think you know what's coming. Yeah, so apparently New York City is going to deploy a traffic disincentivizing fee. It will cover local streets and avenues at or below 60th Street in Manhattan and charge drivers up to $9 per day to enter the area during peak times. So they think it will result in 80,000 fewer vehicles, although that's only about 11% of the total traffic. So we'll see what that does for congestion and air quality.
Yeah, the article I was reading was talking about the New Jerseyites trying to get into the city, that this traffic congestion is a real serious problem. I actually was in that traffic just well, in May, I guess, or was it June? And yeah, it was pretty significant. The getting in and out of New York from New Jersey is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an issue. Hopefully, autonomous transportation helps fix some of this at some point. Here's the U.S. focus list. You've got New York and Chicago at the top there. LA, Boston, Philly, and Miami, Houston, Atlanta, Washington, Seattle, Nashville, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Baltimore, San Francisco, and Denver. And this chart shows the difference between 2023 and 2024. It looks like Boston had a pretty good decline, while Nashville had a pretty good increase in congestion.
Yeah.
If you say increasing congestion's good, I guess that's the wrong choice of words. Here is it visually. The U.S. cities by congestion. Obviously, it's in the places you would expect it to be, the big metro areas. So that's interesting. And then here's the change. The red is a increase, and the green is a decrease.
I see.
So I don't know quite what's happening here in Davenport, Iowa, but it's through the charts. Got some massive congestion problems.
Yeah.
And it looks like second place is Salt Lake City area.
Wow.
Okay.
Got it.
All right, let's shift gears completely. And since we're looking at a map of the United States, a good portion of what we're seeing here is farmland.
Yeah.
So this is kind of interesting. The challenges of agriculture are numerous, right? They're not making any more farmland. So we're kind of forced to figure out a way to do more with less. And the average farmer in the United States is 55 years old. They work about 12 to 18 hours a day during the season. And the growth in the farm labor force, apparently from 2019 projected through 2029, is 1% a year. So here we have a growing demand for food and a very slow growing labor force. So we need a technology solution to help these farmers out.
Right.
And so Deere and Company, John Deere, they are working on what they call the next frontier of agriculture, which is a lot of automation. So instead of just making bigger, more powerful tractors, it's it's farming in a smarter way. So their goal is to develop a fully autonomous farming system for corn and soybeans by 2030. Okay, so this tractor would operate fully autonomously.
Hmm.
And here's actual image of one. You can see there's no one in the seat. This is from a video, and the tractor is actually plowing the field.
Right.
And like FSD, it will stop when there's something blocking its path if it can't go around.
Hmm.
So, doing FSD in a field is probably a lot easier than on city streets. There's probably not a whole lot of things going on in these fields to block the tractors. So apparently, Deere has about 600,000 connected machines, and on an annual basis, they traverse about a third of the Earth's landmass every year. Right. So their fleet has a pretty big impact if they can make it more efficient.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Now, this is one thing that they're using AI to do. It's called See and Spray. So they have this boom with a whole bunch of cameras. I think there's there's 36 cameras on this boom. And the cameras see the weeds before the machine is above them.
Hmm.
And then they can direct, in this case, pesticide or herbicide spray. I guess for weeds, it's herbicide spray,
Mhm.
just to the weeds and not the whole crop.
Right.
Right. So here's an image of one of the cameras. Another one, and then here's using AI, onboard AI in the tractor. They can identify what is a plant in green versus what is a weed in red.
Hmm.
And they were saying that even in dust or even when it's foggy,
Hmm.
they can still figure out, which is the crop versus the weed. But there's, some challenges there to figure that out
Sure. Sure.
when, depending on the conditions. So they gave an example here of this field. They reduced the amount of herbicide needed by 63%. In
Wow.
this case, it was 2,600 and some gallons of saved herbicide. And they were saying globally they've been able to cut it by about 8 million gallons.
Gee.
Right. So if they can keep doing that and finding ways to be more efficient, that reduces costs. It's also probably better from a health perspective for humanity. And then also, this kind of reminds you of what Tesla's doing. They've built a compute cluster. They call it Harvest Compute Cluster to help train their AI systems. So this is FSD and weed killing for the farm.
There you go.
Yeah. And these systems are NVIDIA powered.
Right. Right. Right.
Now, maybe a step beyond that is to use lasers instead of chemicals to kill the weeds and the pests.
Hmm.
And so here's from a video. I forget who this is, but it's a company that's developing a laser-based weed killing system. It identifies the weed and just blasts that weed with a little laser blast.
Yeah. So you and I are apparently, our minds are, kind of in the same worlds here. I spent probably an entire day watching videos of a lot of this automated farm equipment. It is fascinating to
Yeah.
see how they pick the various crops and process them, in the field before they ever even get back to loading them onto trucks to be taken away. Fascinating to see some of the stuff you're talking about with regard to the pesticides and herbicides. But also, I did a deep dive one time into the lack of tractors worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And you start going into the impoverished countries, the impoverished parts of the world, they don't have tractors. They're still doing it by horse or by mule or by cow, but they're not using tractors. And they're talking about the potential for another one of these flip changes like we've had with the phones, eliminating, all of the, going from a telephone wires, you just, don't even have to put the infrastructure in,
Yeah.
but you can go from nothing, no tractor at all, to an automated electric tractor that costs less to maintain, doesn't require, the labor. I mean, they can just dramatically change the productivity.
It might be that as well as a combination of humanoid robots in some places
Could
too,
be, yes, right.
right? Yeah, no, that'll be interesting. So to transition from this beautiful green field
Yeah.
to kind of a more fun topic of Greenland. So if the United States did, manage to acquire Greenland, there's some interesting possibilities there. My friend Lewis made this post about it, and he's talking about Alaska's Seward's Folly, where we bought Alaska from Russia. And at the
Right.
time, seemed to be a pretty dumb move, but obviously through the lens of history and time, it was pretty smart,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Uh,
Very, very smart.
a lot of strategic benefits, but also just the resources that Alaska has. So the same may also be true for Greenland. And if we allow ourselves to think ahead a little bit, Randy,
Okay.
here are some suggestions for renaming Greenland. Because as you know, Greenland's not really that green,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So here's one, I think, good idea. Huge land, formerly Greenland. That
Yes.
would seem in fitting with the incoming president and
President. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That kind of huge. Okay.
Yeah. And of course, Greenland on the map is always showing larger than it really is
Oh yeah. Yeah.
with the way that the maps are projected. So this actually is a very fitting name in many ways. This was kind of funny, although maybe a little cruel. Better Rico. Okay.
Oh,
I apologize to anybody that might be offended by this, but I did think it was funny.
yeah. Yeah.
How about this one? We've got USA. Canada could be USB, and then Greenland could be USC.
Yes, but as a UCLA Bruin, I don't like the USC name at all. That's not a good thing. No, I'm sorry.
Well,
Jack,
okay, so
Jack.
maybe we strike that one out. How about East Rhode Island?
Well, actually, that was an idea I had the other day. I said, why should, Puerto Rico wants to become a state. They're talking about Greenland as a state. It only has 54,000 people. What if it was East Rhode Island instead? They could use a few more people and, uh,
They
and,
could.
and they would no longer be this little tiny state.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. So with that, I bring this outstanding slide presentation to an end.
Okay.
That seemed to go by really fast today, Randy.
It certainly did. You must have been busy. You must have had other things. You might have been trying to make a living or something in the last
There is that.
week.
Yes. Yeah, that does consume some time for sure.
Yeah. What do you do for a living again? Oh yeah, you do something with brilliant stock manipulation or something.
No, I wouldn't use that term. Yeah, no, nothing to do with stock manipulation. Nothing.
All right, all right. I'm sorry if I slandered you on my right here where I've invited you as a guest. But okay, so your company's called Brilliant.
It's
Um,
called Brilliant Advice. We're a financial planning wealth management firm. We manage portfolios for clients. I've been doing this for about 30 years. And of course, nothing I say here is financial advice on your channel or anybody's show.
not,
The
not even investing in real estate in Greenland, for instance.
That's right. That's right. I can't recommend to the United States government whether or not to buy Greenland. I just can't go there. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting field. It's an interesting challenge. I enjoy it because every day there's something different to review and analyze.
All right.
And
Yeah. And we had a real conversation a few months ago. We started on X and it got carried on over here as to a lot of folks that are listening right now are maybe thinking by this time next year they might be a lot wealthier. And that's a real challenge in life. It's not like you can't, people think, oh, well, I'm worth 500,000 now and next year I'll be worth 1.2 million, or I'm worth 1.2, I might be worth 3. Great, cool. But there's a lot of change takes place with that in terms of retirement decisions,
yeah.
families coming after you for your money. Did I say that out loud? Trying to borrow more or whatever it might be. And then also just making decisions with regard to how to invest it, how to manage it, using smart tax methods and whatnot. So do you do any of that kind of stuff?
We do. We do help our clients through all those issues. And it is kind of an interesting phenomenon when you have a large, rapid increase in wealth. We're all able to adapt to steady, more smooth increases. But the large, rapid increase is a really tough one for most people to deal with, particularly because it may change the nature of actually what they should be doing and how they're structuring their investments.
Right.
And most people don't realize, some of the complications that that might bring. You and I talked about, for example, the problem of having too much money in retirement accounts
Right. Yes.
and creating a massive tax problem for yourself.
Yeah.
That is an issue worth thinking about up front if you can avoid that, right? And if you didn't think about that up front and you're now faced with, a retirement account or two that have a huge position, let's say in Tesla or in some other stock, are there some ways to sort of mitigate that? And those are all things worth thinking about.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sorry I have to speak about that in kind of general terms on a show like this, but our industry is heavily regulated, so I have to be careful about how I present things.
Yeah, I've had a few clients over the years who were in your business, and uh, the restrictions on advertising and even social media are just crazy. You have to be so careful. Well, okay, so interesting times that we are in with regard to Tesla right now. The stock seemed to have flatlined around 390 for a few days here. We seem to be give or take 390. I had said a few days ago that I thought that we would be range bound between 380 and 480 until there was significant news. Um, uh, like for instance, I don't think that the Model Y Juniper by itself would generate a big increase unless we are down at these kind of the lower end of the range. If we're up at the higher end of the range when that comes in, I think it'll probably be a nothing burger, unless it's just amazingly cool in some way that we're not expecting. I think it's going to take till we get unsupervised before we will see a significant break out of this range. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the Model Y Juniper is exciting, and I'm interested to learn about what other changes they made to the vehicle, particularly on the inside.
Right.
I'm interested to learn about pricing. I think the earnings call, which has been essentially delayed a week because of the inauguration, will also be another very interesting data point about what Elon and the team say about various things. There's always lots of good information to glean from that. And then I think as we move forward, the progress of FSD and the progress of humanoids,
Right.
of Optimus, particularly for Tesla, I think is very critical. Because it sort of tells us whether or not we're pulling forward some of our expectations or we're pushing them back. Now, that whole game of, pulling forward expectations or pushing them back doesn't concern me too much because I'm very focused on where Tesla's going to be, not this year, not next year, but a little bit further out. And in my case, in my mind, if they're a quarter or two or even a year late, so be it.
Right.
Not really a big deal to the total valuation of the company.
Right.
But for those people that are more short-term minded, certainly a lot of these milestones matter. My work on the valuation of Optimus and the humanoid bots in general show that even at small production numbers, once we get an understanding of what the business model looks like and what the pricing looks like, it will then allow everybody to run their spreadsheets.
Yeah. In fact, I've been asking for three things. I've been asking for the specs, the pricing or the business model, and the projected production. And lo and behold, last night we got the projected production.
Yeah.
So now we at least know what's in Elon's mind in terms of what he thinks he can do. I think, again, you and I both believe that that's realistic. I believe that it's all about this to here, from here to here. That might be pretty complicated to build, but I don't think it's any more complicated than one of these.
Right.
That once they get this part down, as fast as they can make these, they can make the rest of the bot. I don't think without any real problem. So I'm sure Elon already knows all that. He's so far ahead. And he's already seeing what's happening in the lab and happening on the factory floor. So that leaves us with only the two other things that we need to know. Will they in fact rent them out, as you and I have talked about, for $60,000 or $70,000 a year, or will they sell them for $200,000, or will they do something stupid like sell them for $50,000 a piece?
Well, if they do that, then there'll be a significant ongoing recurring revenue. Um, Tesla has shown its understanding of supply and demand,
Right.
right? So even if Tesla could sell them for some crazy low number, they won't because they understand the demand side as well.
Right.
They'll sell them at whatever the market price at that time is. They do that for their vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I and others have run some projections on what that might be. And particularly in a world where you are labor constrained, the demand for robots then will actually be quite high, and companies will be very willing to pay a high price for that labor.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it means shutting down the factory, that's not a good idea, right? They'd be willing to pay quite a bit. And I've run some numbers on what that might be at different labor rates.
Mm-hmm.
And I can easily get to, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 for a robot, and the company's still saving money,
Right.
right? Particularly if it's working 3 shifts.
Right.
So pricing, I think, initially will surprise a lot of people because there's a lot of companies out there that are suffering right now from the lack of labor. And they will want to get their hands on Optimus as quickly as they can.
Right.
And Tesla will sell basically to those companies that have the highest demand and willing to pay the highest price.
Of course.
Right? At least initially. And then as production expands, it opens up the market, the pricing will come down. That will take some time. If there truly is 8 to 10 million shortage, if we're truly short 8 to 10 million manufacturing jobs, then you need 8 to 10 million robots before you start to get a supply and demand balance.
And that's assuming that would even get us into balance, because again, I keep pointing out to anybody that'll listen, as a manufacturer myself, Gary Black finally forced me to do it, and I sent it over to him. I don't have the facility any longer, but out of the 100 employees that I had at the time, I would have bought 10 of these bots immediately, which would have replaced about 35 employees.
Yep.
So, I mean, if they'd been $1 million for those 10 bots, I would have paid it. Wouldn't have even blinked.
Right.
I would have had to borrow the money because I couldn't have just, popped over and got the million. But no, or if it was $60,000 per year for each of those bots, that would have been a very, very good deal.
That's right. And for a business, it doesn't matter whether you pay it up front. Many businesses are going to finance it anyway.
Right.
Or if it's a lease, it's all the same thing. It's the economics are the same over a period of time. It's just how you structure it.
Right.
I think for most people, for most consumers, I think it's going to be a while before we see Optimus in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla will be able to do that if they can ramp up production, right? But most of the demand is going to come from industry first. There'll be a few consumers that'll happily pay a couple $100,000 for a robot, no problem.
Yeah, first on my block.
It's a spare change for many people.
Right.
Or some people.
Yes.
Yep.
No, I know a few who've already said. Warren Redlick has already said he will buy one. He's going to have one.
Well, many of us are hoping that there'll be a bot beta program.
There you go. That's right.
Right, because training will be an issue for a while to come. Synthetic data gets you only so far for FSD, and synthetic data will only get you so far for Optimus as well.
Right.
So the real world interactions will be key for training Optimus.
Yeah, and I've been playing around with the use cases for the home. The use case for me for industry is obvious, but it's not as interesting to people. So I've been playing around with the use cases for the home, and some of the very unusual ones I've come up with, which I think I have a video coming out this weekend, is going to be as a home registered nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the potential for what the Optimus can do to oversee an illness or oversee an accident, oversee and even if you're, say, for instance, by yourself when you get hurt, all of a sudden the Optimus is a tremendous help. But even if there's other people in the house, the Optimus is going to be cool, calm, and collected while it tries to find the finger you cut off and at the same time stop the bleeding. I mean, it can do those things simultaneously. So, and believe me, that sounds funny, but my partner and I were working late one night on a trade show, and he cut off the tip of his finger at 11:30 at night, and I'm sitting there fainting. I didn't quite faint, but he fortunately he told me, Randy, I think I'm going to be okay. You don't have to come over here, but yeah, I mean these things happen, and an Optimus is going to be able to go to its brain, find exactly what to do it exactly the right way, to even probably have the right words of encouragement.
Yeah.
That a human might be completely discombobulated, doing all the wrong things. So yeah, as just the aspect of having it as a physician or a physician's assistant in the home would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it's going to be basically an expert on everything.
Right.
Right. So I mean it's going to be an alternative to a computer, alternative to a cell phone. It's going to be an AI agent. It's going to be labor. It can do whatever you need it to do physically.
Right.
You can have a conversation with it like you could with another person.
Mhm.
I don't think we recognize yet just how useful and amazing and how much we'll use Optimus for all kinds of stuff.
I
Right.
I think it's 100% true. So we are ready. I'm ready for the age of bots. I'm not afraid of bots. I'm not concerned about what it's going to do in terms of disrupting society. I think we've been disrupted before. We can handle it.
Yeah, I think we'll find our way through this. I am concerned because I think the rapidity of this disruption will be unprecedented. And it's not just humanoid bots, but just AI in general. And it's funny when we talk about humanoid bots, the instant reaction for many people is to say, oh, we need to make sure the bots don't take a human job.
Right.
Well, then what are you doing about the rest of AI?
Right.
Just because it's in a body versus, unembodied AI, it's still a threat to human labor. Right. And I don't see anybody suggesting that ChatGPT not take any human jobs. It's too late. That's already happened.
Do you think those scanners in the grocery store didn't take any human jobs?
That's right.
What about the instant tellers outside the bank? Yeah.
Switchboard operators, you name it. The tractors that we were just talking about a minute ago from farm laborers. Right. So if we had that policy throughout history, we wouldn't be where we are today. Now, at the same time, I do appreciate that you start making a billion bots, there's going to be a lot of job loss.
Right.
At some point. And so the question is how we adapt to that. And as it stands right now, I don't really hear a whole lot of conversation at the right levels to really address and think about that.
Only at my level. So I've got a couple of videos I've done. Maybe we could do together sometime about where I think the jobs are going to be. I'd love to maybe have you do your independent research. I could add my research. I think the number one job is going to be what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be a huge number of people that are going to be giving advice on YouTube.
That's right. Well, the other thing I think that's really interesting, and you could look at Elon as kind of the leader in terms of job disruptor for humans, right? You could point at him with Optimus and say, oh, he's going to destroy billions of jobs in the world. Now, if it wasn't Elon, it would be somebody else doing that because there's other humanoid robot companies as well. So don't just blame Elon for it. But anyway, he might be the leading person behind that.
Right.
At the same time, he has another company called Neuralink that may actually be able to make us competitive with AI. Right? You put a computer in our brain, and suddenly now we're more capable and more intelligent than we ever were before. So that may be the long-term answer for humanity is to be competitive with AI, and basically is to become AI ourselves. And that is an uncomfortable thing for many people to think about. However, many people have pacemakers, hearing aids, and other devices in their body.
Yep.
My oldest son has a device in his chest that helps him control seizures.
Wow.
So we're already kind of robotic in many ways
Sure.
as humans, or at least many people are.
Yeah.
So it just may take some time for us to get around to the idea of putting a computer in our brain, but that's the next logical step.
Yeah, and of course, we've again, Elon's already shown us that the same kind of uses for the Neuralink that you're talking about that we're already employing for, say, the heart, just to give somebody who does not have the capability to move their limbs the ability to do other human tasks that they can't do otherwise, eventually to move their limbs. But announced yesterday also is that they have a Neuralink in a monkey for 2 years now that is allowing this monkey to see who
Yeah,
has no optic nerve. So
there you go.
completely circumventing the optic nerve, going directly to the cerebral cortex and creating the ability of this monkey to see. So would we want to not do that?
Well, would you not want to upgrade your brain if you could?
If you could, yeah,
Right, even beyond that, you're right. Like absolutely, that's a no-brainer, right?
so to speak, yeah.
So to speak. Yeah. To be careful with the terms here. But anybody to gain the ability to walk, use their limbs, to feel, sensation again, to see, those are obvious uses of Neuralink. The next step, though, is to augment humans and make them better.
Right,
And I think what we're seeing is a massive, massive increase in the amount of intelligence in this world. And initially, it's coming from AI,
right.
but eventually it'll be that inside our own brains, augmenting our own intelligence. And that may be a very, very important step for humanity to get to.
It is,
Um,
it is absolutely fascinating, and I can certainly understand that there are people who are fearful about it. But I've always said that I find fear to be a useless
yeah,
a useless use of energy unless there's something right in front of you. Of course, it's always nice to think about what might happen and make, you know, plan Bs and plan Cs, whatever, in order to not have your life interrupted, but to be fearful of things that you have no, that you can't even know if they're going to happen or not is a kind of a useless way to spend time and energy. Not that I've listened to my own advice sometimes, of course.
well, it's a good thing I haven't told you about that giant spider on the shelf behind you.
All right, Cern. Well, as you said, we had a potpourri of, you didn't say that actually, but you said, I forget what
Hodgepodge, I believe.
hodgepodge you called it. I used a much fancier word. So I don't know if that makes me better than you or just, I'm not,
Probably.
probably, I'm not sure. Anyway, okay, Cern, thanks as always for coming on. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.